Perfect. So again, thank you for joining this session on Yocto Project Development with VS Code. I know a lot of you have probably dived into using this extension. We're over 10,000 downloads on the marketplace, so definitely a lot of feedback has come in from you. So a big shout out to everyone who's using this extension for their Yocto-based projects. For starters, my name is Mohammed, and I would like to mention right off the bat that I'm relatively new to the embedded world, so definitely go easy on me. But like I say, my primary focus is in web development. And as we are developing VS Code, the stack that is utilized under the hood is TypeScript. So a lot of my expertise come into place while working with our team at SFL. So to give you an overview in this session, I will continue the discussion from the last summit from the Yocto Project Summit in November that was conducted by my team and I. And with today's focus, we'll be looking on how to boost your day-to-day productivity using the VS Code IDE, specifically working with your Yocto-based projects. To give you some context, over the last 6 months, part of the RFQ for VS Code at SFL Linux, we've been working on this extension, and the last few releases really showcase that we now have a very complete extension that works specifically for your daily day-to-day activity. For some background, at SFL, we're a group of experts who specialize in various open source technologies, stacks, and work in many key areas like the robotics, medical devices, aviation, IoT, and many more. This is all to say that having such a large set of expertise was really beneficial for us to bridge the gap between developing this extension and especially, as I mentioned, under the hood, developing features in TypeScript and incorporating custom features relative to BaitBig can be challenging for some. Let's jump into some key metrics. I definitely invite everyone to join the project VS Code community. As I mentioned, with the recent releases, we've definitely received very good feedback on the marketplace, specifically from the previous maintainer of the project, Eugene Wilkins. So that was really great for our team to see this as a feedback. If you haven't already downloaded the extension, I highly encourage you to download it, because the best way for you to understand the concerns and the use of this extension is for you to go and play with it. And as Megan mentioned from last week's conference from the embedded world, I believe there was a big buzz around this. So in this presentation, let's continue forward with that. We're also very active on GitHub. So as issues are reported, we're taking a look on the daily basis, my team and I. So don't hesitate to provide your feedback, any bugs that you see, any critical issues. We're open for that. Not to say that we will have a new release by the end of the month, which will be version 2.5. And since our backlog is thinning down a little bit, this is a great time for the community to give us some new ideas to implement and integrate. Another important thing to mention is that our release cycle is fully automated, and we have over 200 automated tests that run in the background, and our pipeline is very robust, so we haven't really faced any critical issues thus far. I also invite you to go to our blog post website where we do weekly releases detailing in depth the new features that have been implemented and integrated. So it's another place of medium for you to reflect on. Platform support. As many might know, we also provide running the extension on many platforms. This was a very key integration on our side the last few weeks, knowing that our language server should now be able to be integrated with other IDEs. I really want to highlight the extension language server. Specifically, we collaborated with Fred Vu, an independent worker, who integrated our language server with NeoVim. So that was a first integration with an external IDE tool. Also, the latest release of version 2.4 that was released last week, we also now support VS Codium. So those who don't want to work with Microsoft branding or license for their Yocto-based projects can now work with that under the MIT license. Again, for more details, please visit our blog post for more in-depth explanation of the newly released features. So first, let's go over some of the core VS Code language features of the extension that provide development improvements for BitBake specifically. I do want to mention that if you're interested for a deeper dive or demo, I will be present in the next few days. So don't hesitate to contact us or come directly to the booth, the Yocto Project booth. So that might be a nice opportunity to deep dive or do more specific demos based on your needs. So the next set of demos that I'll show you are specifically for BitBake. We will look at getting the documentation of variables on the fly. We will look at code completion for reserved variables, how to scan a tree and navigate, the source navigation, be able to quickly add recipes, build them, perform new recipe scans. And lastly, specifically for improvements for BitBake, we'll take a look at diagnosing Bash and Python in a singular file. So inside a recipe. So for the first example, let's go over variable documentation. So we're going to create a variable. There we go. So the first one is documentation hover. So as you can see here, we're fetching the definition of the variable depends. And this is the latest version of the documentation fetched from the latest reference manual. Therefore, as updates are released, your version of the reference manual will be also up to date. Next, we also have some local variables like description, homepage, etc. We can follow that with code completion. As you can see here, we start typing FI. We can see the source from both Yocto and other sources that we define in our configuration files. In terms of performance, as you can see, it's relatively smooth. We definitely refactor that on a daily basis to provide a better user experience for all. As mentioned, we can also do source navigation. So we're going to search for a recipe, light PD. As this is added to our navigation menu on the left. We'll open that up. As you click on a reserved keyword, we have the option to go to definitions. We can go to its reference if they are defined. So as you can see, it's relatively smooth experience thus far. Next, let's do, since we have a recipe called lightpdd, we'll do a BitBake build. So to do a build, we have some quick access action items that we can utilize to run quickly to do a build for a recipe. You also have other bid-bake commands like clean a recipe, run a task for a recipe. You can scan the recipe. We will look at some of the dev tool features shortly. So let's go ahead and build our recipe. It's a bit hard to see, but right underneath the progress bar, you can see the number of recipes scanned in your project. Right underneath here. And while the scan is happening, you have a status bar right beside it. Okay. So now we want to trigger a recipe scan for the recipe we just have modified. So we'll do a save on the file to trigger a scan. And as you can see on the right side, there's a progress for the scan. And right underneath at the bottom, you can see BidBake is parsing the recipe. Value, however, it's relatively great. We definitely know the final values of our variables now, which was not there in our previous releases. As mentioned, once you click on Go to Definitions, you get a quick navigation menu on the right side with all the definitions entry points that you can see our variable has been referenced to. Next, as I mentioned, we provide diagnostics for both Bash and Python. So we'll go ahead and make use of this to see if we can get some error warnings or errors in the IDE. Just as a keynote that we do piggyback on Bash, official Bash and Python extensions as dependencies for our extension. So as you can see, we have our recipe, both Python and Bash syntax is being interpreted by the extension. So here we have an indentation warning with the assigned message. We can use the go to definitions and go to references, both for Bash and Python. Before we go into DevTool, I want to give you a bit some of the background. So looking into more advanced features for our extension, our primary goal was to help application developers utilizing the extension. So the last few minutes, we've gone over some of the core language features that VS Code extensions provide. But now let's go more specifically to BidBake and see how it can help application developers. So one of the tools that we are leveraging on is the dev tool, as many of you already know. We've also added a dedicated view for DevTool workspace that we will see shortly. So all the commands and functions that DevTool provides are now accessible via the extension, such as editing a recipe, modifying, resetting, and furthermore. The dev tool also allows us for better cross-compilation, as well as for debugging purposes. I believe the goal behind this is definitely to create a terminal-free workflow where new users don't have to rely on a terminal for their projects and can stick to VS Code as a singular source of their workflow, especially in terms of productivity. So as I mentioned, right on the left side, we have our DevTool workspace. Now that we want to modify the same recipe that we had loaded just prior, the light PD recipe. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. You can see right on the bottom, the status bar, BitBake is using DevTool under the hood to parse our recipe. We get a nice prompt from VS Code that a new workspace has been detected. Now let's go in and let's modify this recipe. The scanning definitely takes a bit of time. Definitely something we are working on to improve. But I think it's a fair game in terms of the risk and reward. So now we have our recipe open under a C file. So we have a server C file. Now let's see how we can use DevTool to debug. We can use VS Code quick commands to run the debugger. And we can use, as we are used to, the debugging methods and flows, such as stepping into, stepping over. So again, this is to create a terminal-free workflow for developers. I do want to encourage you to go ahead and try this out. I know a demo is usually not enough for everyone to understand, but this is definitely something that I see, especially in our internal projects, that is utilized by many. We also support remote development with our extension. So you're now able to install the remote SSH extension on your machine, then utilize the extension to connect to your remote machine. The only downside is you will need to reinstall the extension on that remote machine, which is an extra step, but I think it's fair. Other than that, all the functionality that you have seen thus far is a one-to-one replication. What's next and future developments? I think, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, one of our key concerns has been to improve our language server, specifically for people who, let's say, work with the web environment. Right now, only some of our features are functional, like syntax hiding, completion, which are, as I said, basic language server features. Therefore, anything advanced relatively to BitBake has not been integrated for the web support. But other than that, if you're on Linux, Windows, Mac, you should have one-to-one replication of the features. But again, I cannot really highly encourage everyone to give us your feedback on GitHub. We're very active. Even today, my team is working back at the office. So all inputs are welcomed. Thank you.